Happy Friday, everybody, and welcome back inside the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, gambling fantasy extraordinaire. This is what you need to know to make a little bit of money every single week in the NHL, and today is no exception. We are talking about all the things happening outside the playoffs. Boston Bruins, Edmonton Oilers, lots of action, including, is Cale Makar a top 3 player in the NHL? Steele and I will break it all down for you on today's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, everybody, and thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are here Monday to Friday with fresh and hot fantasy hockey content for your listening and viewing pleasure. So thank you so much for riding with us every single day. We seriously appreciate that love. And while you're out there, you might as well smash that subscribe button. Hit the follow button. Drop us a comment. Steele and I appreciate every single one. And make sure you're still out there hitting us up on Twitter. Feed those DMs with all the fantasy questions that you need. Make sure you're tuned in, because this is the hub for all of your draft needs upcoming. We will be breaking down positions, rankings, and everything you need to make sure you are the top GM in your league this year. On today's episode, my friends, lots happening around the NHL, including in Boston. Some questionable moves with the firing of their head coach, Bruce Cassidy. Lots to talk about. And is Cale Makar a top 3 player in the NHL? That's coming up later on today's episode, Steele. A little bit of Edmonton Oilers talk as well. But why don't we talk about it? The Boston Bruins fire Bruce Cassidy after a 51-26-5 record this regular season, Steele. He doesn't say he gets a raw deal. I tend to disagree. That seems like a very raw deal in my opinion. Let's talk about it, because now there's some repercussions happening, ruffling the feathers of David Pastrnak. Let's talk about it all, my friend. What do you think is going down in Boston?
Yeah, it really seems that everything's going downhill this offseason to start the offseason for the Boston Bruins. To me, I was very shocked and surprised to see a guy like Bruce Cassidy and everything that he's done for the Boston Bruins get fired. You know, after a really good season at that too. Like you said, 245 and 108 record with the Boston Bruins in the 6 years he was with them.
Mm-hmm.
6 consecutive years in the playoffs. He made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2019, where unfortunately for the Boston Bruins and himself, they got beat by the St. Louis Blues. I can't put any blame on Bruce Cassidy for this. He, in my opinion, did not deserve this whatsoever. He's been an absolutely fantastic coach ever since he came into the organization. And I just think this is another general manager who's kind of trying to make the changes and has done so in a very bad way.
Look, Steele, there is something fishy going on in Boston, and I think you're making a really excellent point about the GM here, because maybe this is one of those situations where he's overstepping, and we're already hearing from some of the Boston Bruin players, especially David Pastrnak, and there's unconfirmed reports if this is coming directly from him or not, but it seems like it is, saying that he won't play if Sweeney is the GM next season. And you can't help but feel that this might have been a little bit of an overreach, an overstep, and an overreactment to what seems to be one of the best coaches going. And you can already hear rumblings out there. There are a lot of teams out there looking for a head coach. This guy is not going to be unemployed very long. He's already mentioned that he had tenure on his contract in Boston and very much expects to still coach. He had the Jack Adams Award on his mantle 2 years ago, Steele. That doesn't make sense. There's a whole lot of scratching of heads going on around, because also at the end of the day, they were a couple of bounces away from still playing hockey potentially.
Yeah.
And I think that really should be the conversation, because he handled it with class. But like you said, you can't help but feel that this is a GM top-down move that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but might really end up costing them on the ice if guys like David Pastrnak and these top-tier guys don't want to play.
Yeah, you can't lose a guy like David Pastrnak. He's got 504 points in 510 games. He's almost a point per game player. And especially with the older guys that, we've talked a lot about, the dynasty of the Pittsburgh Penguins. It might be almost impossible to keep all three of those guys, Chris Letang, Sidney Crosby, and Evgeny Malkin. It's looking the same way for the Boston Bruins now. Patrice Bergeron is up there in age. I would, obviously consider that he's probably going to remain with the Boston Bruins. But if David Pastrnak's gone, that's probably your second best player on your team right now who's falling off, who's going to a different team. And you've got these older guys who are still obviously elite, but it really puts the question and the future of the Boston Bruins in question. To me, it just doesn't make any sense. You look at the playoffs, the first round matchup against the Carolina Hurricanes. They didn't win a game on the road, and neither did the Hurricanes. They just unfortunately were the higher seed. They had home ice advantage, and they ended up winning in 7 games.
Yeah.
They played a good round against the Carolina Hurricanes. They just didn't end up getting the job done. So for me, it has to be something internally between Bruce Cassidy and Don Sweeney. Everything outside with my own two eyes, I can't see any reason why he would get the boot.
It doesn't make a lot of sense on the surface, Steele. Look, we're not close to the team. We're not on the beat on the Boston Bruins scene, but even some of these guys, like one of the guys that I absolutely love who writes for The Athletic is Fluto Shinzawa, and he is an absolutely amazing journalist. And when he can't put his finger on it and he's right there in the mix with the team, maybe there's something more brewing internally, like you said, Steele. We're not here to speculate on that. But after a 51-win season, a playoff berth, and a 7-game first-round series against a very good Carolina team, one in which I believe they went toe-to-toe with. Sure, Carolina was the better team in the end, but we're giving credit where credit is due, and apparently that wasn't happening in Boston for whatever reason. But he was hired in 2016, and since then, he has been an effective coach, and I expect him to land on his feet very soon. What the repercussions will be for next season for a Boston team that we know does not scream a ton of talent depth, we will see, because these repercussions might continue to reverberate throughout the summer. That's a bunch of adjectives for you there, but what you do need to know is big-time news from BetOnline. It is your continued number one source for all your sports betting stats and info. Find all the latest development, news, and odds, including this year's basketball championship. The NBA is wrapping its season, and BetOnline is your go-to. There is also the NHL final, Major League Baseball, MMA, lots of fighting, boxing. They have it all covered. It is your continued sports wagering information source for live betting, esports, and more. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn about the trends and all the action. Bet online, where the game starts.
Thank you for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. And real quick, we have an important favor to ask you. If we've put together a survey so we can learn more about our listeners like you and make your favorite Locked On podcast even better. This is your opportunity to let us know what you like and don't like about the Locked On Podcast. Go to lockedonpodcast.com/survey right now to get started. It doesn't take very long. And once you complete a survey, you can qualify to win it for a chance to win one of 10 $100 Ticketmaster gift cards. To take one of our audience surveys, go to lockedon.com/survey. And thank you so much for all your help. And thank you so much for tuning in to the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast with Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden. Look, you and I have been talking a lot about the injuries that players have dealt with over the postseason, heading into the postseason, that have happened during the postseason. So a lot of injuries went on with the Edmonton Oilers. May have been a factor in the sweep for the Colorado Avalanche. I don't think it would have been a factor in the series because I still think the Avalanche would have won, but definitely a factor of why they got swept by the Avalanche. Yep. So let's start with the injuries to some of their top players. You and I already discussed about Darnell Nurse and the hip flexor injury he had to start the series.
Yep.
Let's talk about their second best player, though, Leon Draisaitl with a high ankle sprain. Clearly, everyone knew about this. They made it. It was very known. They targeted him. How much of a factor does that play into the sweep as well as the series?
I think the sweep, given the two major injuries, and we're not talking about a bit banged up here. We're talking about Darnell Nurse and Leon Draisaitl dealing with major injury, and this is part of the beast deal. When you're coming out of the playoffs, yes, you have to win. Yes, you have to put up, but you also need to get lucky. You need to get lucky on a number of fronts, and injuries is always right there at the top of the list. And hey, the Edmonton Oilers did not get lucky, and that's just how it goes. But 32 points in 16 playoff games with a high ankle sprain is all kinds of impressive. And I just wonder what kind of attention Leon Draisaitl would get in a big market on another team, not with Connor McDavid. And I know everyone gives this guy credit, but man, is he good. Because, Steele, like you said, I'm totally in agreement with you. I don't think this changes the outcome of the series. Colorado still moves on in everyone's opinion, and I think for good reason. But credit due to these guys because, quote, he was playing with a high ankle sprain. He got hurt in game 5 of the LA series. He was playing through a lot of pain, unquote. That's Holland, the GM of the Edmonton Oilers. Look, they deserve some credit there, Steele. And realistically, there's a lot to talk about with the Edmonton Oilers. So props due to Leon Draisaitl, but they face a very, very interesting offseason because I don't know if you've taken a look at the books. There is about 12 players, RFA and unrestricted free agent. It is going to be a busy offseason for Ken Holland, starting in the crease.
Yeah, and I think that's where we have to shift over to right now. Another team in the NHL looking for 2 goalies this offseason. They've already made it known Mikko Koskinen is not going to be back. His contract is up. As well as Mike Smith, he has been considering retiring after that loss in Game 4 to the Colorado Avalanche. He's 40 years old. I don't expect him to come back, and even if he does, I would expect him to be a backup for a different team because, look, Ken Holland has already made it. He's already made it known as well that Stuart Skinner is going to be the backup goaltender moving forward for next season. And they're going to be on the market for 2 goalies. We saw that with a couple teams last year with the Carolina Hurricanes and Maple Leafs completely switching up their tandem in the crease.
Oh, man.
And it looks like the Leafs are going to be looking for another tandem this year as well. But that's a conversation for another episode. Let's stick with the Oilers right now.
Yes.
Look, everyone at this point now knows how I feel about Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen. I'm not going to reiterate myself. I've made very clear how I feel about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is the best move for the Edmonton Oilers to move on from both these guys. A 40-year-old Mike Smith is not going to get the job done.
No.
Look, he had a great first 2 rounds of the playoffs.
He battled.
He definitely battled. I didn't expect Mikko Koskinen to ever come in or start a game. They're just not good. Those are 2 guys that are just not going to get the job done for you.
No.
And the Edmonton Oilers front office, they have a lot of work to do this offseason because, like you said, 12 contracts, RFAs, UFAs, whatever it is. They need to figure out what they're going to do, as well as Evander Kane as well.
And it's not just some minor players, right? Like, yeah, Kyle Turris, Derek Brassard, Josh Archibald, fine. But also Ryan McLeod, Jesse Puljujarvi, Kyler Yamamoto. Those are some names that you have. Brett Kulak, they need defensemen. He's a UFA. Chris Russell, UFA. Koskinen, UFA. There's a lot to be done for Ken Holland in this offseason. It sounds like they want Evander Kane back, and that's where we should, I think, probably talk about next. Because still the playoff leader in goals, Steele. He is going to have a number of suitors in the offseason. He's going to get paid again. He proved that he can still get it done. One of our very first episodes was when the Edmonton Oilers signed Evander Kane, and he was a big reason for their push and a big reason for their playoff run. So you know he's going to get his offers, but it came out today, Steele. I don't know if you saw the statement from Evander Kane. It's almost assuredly that he will test the free agent waters. It's just too much money that he's going to be offered. He thanks the city of Edmonton. He thanks all his haters as well. Check Twitter out. We can retweet it for you. But it very much sounds like he's thanking Edmonton and moving on. Sounds like he's interested in coming back. But realistically, after posting what could be the playoff lead in goals, who knows how this ends up, you know he's getting paid.
I don't think he gets paid. I don't
Okay.
think he does.
I wish we could
still
side
think
bet this somehow.
hey, maybe we could. We could discuss that off the show, but I don't think he gets paid. And I still think there's a lot of controversy and a lot of situations outside or off the ice that bring up that need to be brought up in conversations.
Look,
true. He's played for 5 or 6 different teams in his NHL career. And he just stated that the Edmonton Oilers is the best organization he's ever played for. Yeesh. To me, by him saying that, it's a little off for me. And I don't know. Okay. I don't really like that he said that, because it seems like every single place he's gone in the past, there's always been a problem. So it's not a big statement for him to go out and say, oh yeah, this is the best organization he's played for for the last, 4 or 5 months since he's joined the team. I don't think he gets paid. I think he's going to have a landing spot. I think he's going to land somewhere and he's going to still be in the NHL. I just don't think he gets paid that much.
Let me throw a quote at you quickly from Ken Holland. This was from this morning. When he joined our team, he made our team deeper. Can I keep him? Yeah, his cap number was $2 million at the time, but I do not expect him to be playing at a $2 million cap number next year. Not even close. I don't know what the number will be, but I would have to sit and talk to his agent. We'll see what happens, Steele. You know what? You're bringing up good points, though, because those are all facts that obviously come along with the baggage that is Evander Kane. But this is an NHL that is a what have you done for me lately kind of a show. And what has he done is he's performed. And these kinds of pure power forward goal scorers are a dime a dozen these days. So maybe maybe it's somewhere in the middle of what you're expecting and what I'm expecting. But either way, I think, unfortunately for the Edmonton Oilers, they just have way too many holes to fill in this offseason. And if it's, throwing a few million at Evander Kane or trying to fill the hole in goal, I think it's clear where Ken Holland is going to divert some of those assets.
Yeah. So where do you think he might land for a contract-wise? Like around what range?
I'm gonna say between 4 and 6 per.
Okay.
Because when I say get paid, I don't think he's going to be throwing a multi-year deal at 9 or 10 plus. Just compared to what his stock was 6 months ago, I believe he's now reinserted himself into one of those positions that maybe he signs a mini 2-year bridge deal of some description. And then really we'll see what he can do. Because like you said, can he really clear the cobwebs out from between the ears? We'll see. But I also believe there is some legality drama lingering with his last contract with the Sharks. So like you said, it's not a clear cut. Let's just sign a beast mode power forward here. So there's lots to shake out in the offseason, but make sure you keep it tuned right here to this podcast, because the Locked On Fantasy Podcast, baby, is going to be here to hold your hand through everything you need through this offseason. Steele and I ain't taking any breaks, baby. We will be here every week, cutting back the episodes a little bit, but make sure you keep it locked right here. Don't miss a single episode of draft preview, draft breakdowns, all the sleepers and X factors, because trust me, this is where Steele and I butter our bread, baby, and we're coming in hot this summer.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available wherever you get your podcast, which also includes YouTube. So if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate it so much. And thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode. Starting off the weekend right here, Flip. Let's do something a little fun, though. Let's end this episode a little bit, with some more energy than we have with the big time. Actually, what am I saying? The big time bets are full of energy. I don't know what I'm saying right now.
It's okay.
We're top 3 players in the NHL. I've been hearing this a lot recently. Is Cale Makar in the top 3? Just in general, though. We're not talking about fantasy-wise. We're just talking as of right now. Is he a top 3 player?
I'm going to say right now, most assuredly, because there's not too many other guys that are turning the page right now for me, aside from Cale Makar, and he's right in the mix. So this is not one of the, this is a bit of those subjective things that he is definitely good enough to be in that conversation. And if people aren't ready to give him that credit, I think they need to watch a little bit more hockey, because points are one thing, right? They're not the be-all and end-all. If you're a Mark Giordano and you're still getting it done in other ways, you're still an effective player, you're still a good player, and then there's special. And that's where Cale Makar has elevated his game to, because we've talked about it. the skating, the poise, his passing, his vision, his shooting, sneaky shot. He can literally do everything, Steele. And if the Colorado Avalanche win a Stanley Cup, and this kid gets the Conn Smythe at 23 years old on the heels of one of the most historic postseasons ever, we're throwing around Bobby Orr's name, people. Wake up. In my opinion, Steele, this is a great conversation to have because right now, I don't know how you can say he's not. Connor McDavid, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, why not?
It's hard. It's definitely hard. He's right there.
He's right there.
And that's the thing. Everybody's going to have a different list. And like you said, it's very subjective.
Yeah.
But it's definitely hard because you start thinking of, oh my God, I left this guy out. He should be in the top 5. He should be in the top 3. For me, 1 and 2 are easily McDavid Matthews. 1 and 2 are easily McDavid Matthews. And then this is where it gets hard because of how great Nathan MacKinnon is. So this is where it gets hard. For me, Cale Makar is top 5. But as well, I've also said Hedman is still better than Makar. So this is where it gets very dicey because then, you if you think about top goalies, you think about Vasilevsky. Is he a top 5 player in the NHL as well?
Oh, yeah. It's a juicy conversation.
It's a juicy conversation. So for me, as of right now, I'm going to have to say no.
Okay.
I'm going to have to say no. For me, it goes McDavid, Matthews, MacKinnon, and then probably Draisaitl, and then Makar. So I've got Makar in the top 5.
I think this is a really special thing here going because usually when you see one of those crazy good offensive performance from a D-man, maybe the defensive side of the puck gets neglected in some aspect. You go, oh my goodness, this guy is for sure the best offensive defenseman, but is he really the best defenseman as well? And what we saw from Cale Makar against Connor McDavid, head-to-head, stripping the puck, staying toe-to-toe with him pace-wise, I think for me is a little check in the column for the conversation of, is he in that top 3? Because we've seen how many seasons put up by some defensemen in the NHL over the past 10 years, even Erik Karlsson doing a couple of those, putting up an insane amount of points, but realistically, his giveaway numbers not good, takeaway numbers not good, defensive metrics not good. Cale Makar is just doing a little bit of everything, and averaging 1.57 points per game in the playoffs is just crazy. And to be in the conversation with names like Brian Leetch and Bobby Orr is just truly special. And like you said, Steele, there is just so much elite talent right now at the top of this table that is just, it's an interesting conversation to have because like you just said it, Leon Draisaitl also has to be right there in that convo because, 1 point off of Connor McDavid, I don't care who you are, that puts you in the conversation as well.
Yeah, and I was talking to a friend earlier today, and we were trying to come up with this, and we were saying how, when you go to like Yahoo Sports or you see a new fantasy ranking before the season starts, like, oh, this list is garbage. Like, this person should be there. And then you try to do it yourself.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, this is the hardest thing possible because you really have to consider every single player and everything they bring into their organization and everything they bring into the game of hockey. So it is one of the hardest conversations to have, but that's why Flip and I are here. We're going to be giving you all of our mock drafts for next season very, very soon in the off season, closer obviously to the next season start date. But this is what we're going to do. We're going to help you out as much as possible. We're going to create our own list, our mock drafts, where we're going to take these players, and it's going to help you guys out there so much.
Take this in, Steele. Speaking of drafts, because all of that is true, and like Steele said, we will be breaking down everything. I mean, positionally, top lists, mock drafts, everything that you need. So smash that subscribe button right now. Go ahead and do it. I saw you. Much love. Because then you will be tapped right in, and we will be feeding you all that pre-draft content that you need. But I mentioned the draft, Steele, and very quickly before we sign off on this one. The 2017 NHL draft featured Nico Hischier first overall and Nolan Patrick second overall. If you're the New Jersey Devils and the Philadelphia Flyers watching this Stanley Cup playoffs, maybe you're kicking yourself a little extra hard in the rear because you let Cale Makar slip to 4 and the Colorado Avalanche. Miro Heiskanen is still an elite defenseman. He is a above average defenseman for sure at this point, maybe not elite yet. so I'm not really hating Dallas as much, but shame on them too for letting Cale Makar go to 4 at the Colorado Avalanche, because just looking at this draft now, and I know Nico Hischier has turned his career around a little bit, but come on, Philadelphia. You could have had Cale Makar on the blue line. If you're a Philadelphia fan, you might just be clawing your eyes out when you relook at these draft numbers. And I just wanted to throw that tidbit out there.
And no, you're absolutely right. Those 3 teams have definitely got to be kicking themselves a lot over the last couple of years, just based off of watching Cale Makar, because he's an elite talent. We're going to have some more fun with these lists. We're going to talk about some other players as well in the coming weeks. But for today, it was just Cale Makar, because that has been the debate for the last couple of days because of the show he's putting on in the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. So we'll have some more fun at the end of the shows. But for today, it was Cale Makar. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, you have to check out the Locked On NHL. From the first round matchups to each Stanley Cup kiss, Locked On NHL covers the playoffs like no other. Hear the latest news and opinions from local experts every Monday through Friday. It's free and available wherever you get your podcasts, just like this podcast right here. So again, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe or the follow button. Yes, I'm talking about you out there. Please do so right now. And once you do, you'll get all the latest episodes of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast as soon as they're available each and every day, Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there. And we shall see you back here again on Monday.